The time, beginning of October. The placement, very spooky. What would happen if you took a handful of Disney comic fans that get more easily scared than a metaphorical cat and gave them the assignment to compile a top 10 list of what would be, in their biased subjective view, some of the best and simultaneously scariest Disney comics they could find? The answer is this video. What would happen is this video.
Number 10. Trick or Treat.
The classic Halloween story with art and writing by Carl Barks. It was written alongside the short of the same name, and while this story is not as good as the short...
Excuse me?
What are you doing here?
I'm so sorry. And nostalgia took over and I'll put this back up. I'm so sorry.
And while this story is not as good as the short, it's still a great story. In it, the nephews are annoyed that Donald is a meanie who not only refuses to give candy, but is also bullying them while doing it. But with the help of Witch Hazel, they try to put Donald in his place. The story is a perfect Halloween read, it's spooky, it's fun, and it takes place during Halloween. Not much more you can say about that.
Number 9. The 13th Floor.
So this is one of the series that came up around 2000 in the wake of Paperinik New Adventures. Like PKNA and Mickey Mouse Mystery Magazine, it was published not on Topolino, but as larger albums with glossy paper and very nice covers. Compared to the Mickey Mouse Mystery Magazine X Mickey, which was named after X-Files I guess, was a little bit less mature, but I think it has a lot of things going for it. There are many new characters, which are very well characterized, and the concept of different dimensions gives the artist a lot of space to come up with fantastic or horrifying settings. The atmosphere varies between serious and silly. This one is definitely more on the serious side. It was written by Francesco Ottibani and drawn by Silvio Camboni. One of the new characters, Tony Toppersby, who used to transport people between the worlds and is now running an antique shop, disappears while his store gets turned upside down. The police is clueless, as they often are, and it's up to Mickey and his werewolf companion, Pipwolf, or Goofwolf, or Goofwolf if you read the German versions, to solve the case. As it turns out, the mystery had to do with a hotel that burned down many years ago and should have burned someone along with it, but didn't. I think this story has earned its reputation as one of the highlights of the series. The bad guy is a real menace. We'll forget the sequel where he turns into a laughingstock. And while Camboni's characters are maybe a bit too cartoony, he does come up with some very convincing settings. We also get the first appearance of this guy, and despite the serious tone, Ottibani manages to throw in quite a few nice little gags, like Mickey standing on the shoulders of Pipwolf and commanding attention and projecting authority.
Number 8. I Am the Phantom Blood.
Written by Marco Nucci with art by Casti. Oh boy, now this one is very juicy. For your information, I didn't write the script. I Am the Phantom Blood is the very first in a trilogy of stories to define Marco Nucci's writing career as a whole and help to bring back the Phantom Blood we once knew since the 1939 story. In this story, Blood, after a slow and lengthy process of average and mundane crimes, lost himself becoming the everyday criminal. He takes a long break in an old dilapidated villa to reflect on his career and his new master plan. Flowers obtained by crafting poisonous herbs and lyles and chrysanthemums that have the ability to wipe out the memories of a person. And then of course Mickey has to use his great detective skills to solve this case, while of course also suffering from the memory loss. The best part of the story by far has to be the blood. Like, what did you expect? He's the guy in the title. The black panels in which the blood talks with the readers in the beginning are just perfection, and it's such a creative choice than making it those plain old yellow panels. Some find the biggest flaw in this story is the ending. They don't feel like it has a real ending. I can't really explain why, because that would spoil the story. And either way, the Blood has regained his rightful title as the King of Fear and my heart. Go read it if you like the old-fashioned Blood. It's a great story for Halloween, and it's the Blood story.
Number 7. The Old Castle's Secret.
The Old Castle's Secret is one of Carl Barks' most well-known classics, and for many reasons. It's the second appearance of Scrooge McDuck, which means that his design and character aren't quite what we're now used to, but the story gives us a lot of lore that will become standard for the character in later years. One of those pieces of lore is that Scrooge is originally Scottish and that his family has an ancient castle in the Highlands, Castle McDuck. There's supposed to be a treasure in it, but also a ghost. Barks and his ducks take us on a haunting mystery with great art that looks especially good in the black and white format, and superb storytelling as we have come to expect from the Duckman. There's a feeling of uncertainty throughout the entire story, and we even see Scrooge and his nephews in a seemingly hopeless situation. But the clues to the answers have been masterfully shown to us in the pages before, and when everything starts to click, you don't even have time to revel in that feeling, because the ghost of Sir Quack is on your heels again. It's a masterpiece, and even though I tried, honestly, not much can be said about it that hasn't already been said. And if you haven't read it, what are you doing? Read it!
Number 6. Grimald's Heart.
And because X-Mickey fits the genre so well, we've selected another of its stories for this video. It was, again, written by our friend Atobibas, but the drawings come from Roberto Villan this time. Villan became something of an X-Mickey regular, drawing no less than 14 long chapters, and you can easily see why, since he excels at spooky atmospheres. This story focuses on another of the important new characters, this woman, who is something of a ruler, trying to maintain law and order in the world of the impossible. Which means that Pipwolf isn't a big fan of hers, nevertheless they have to work together. I avoided her name because the Italians didn't make the best choice here. Since she's similar looking to Minnie, they called her Manny, apparently not aware that that is a male name in English. The first German translation called her Ninny, which is better but not great, and the second one changed that to Missy, which I quite like, but it doesn't sound as good in English either. There's a problem in this story is that Grimold, one of the 12 elders, particularly dangerous villains, supposedly imprisoned in a secure place, seems to have awoken. The butler Flat, another odd name, I prefer the German Eagle, gets possessed and tries to throw down Grimold's heart,
Title drop,
which is made of stone and had been in Manny's possession since she defeated him after he killed her friends. Yeah, this is heavy stuff. So now it's up to a trio of friends to defeat him again, which is why she asks Mickey and Pipwolf to help. Just like with the 13th floor, Atobibas keeps the tone from getting too heavy by throwing in well-placed gags like this. Mickey's initial journey to the world of the impossible. Hahaha. Nudity. Funny. Hahaha. Nevertheless, it's a story dominated by high stakes and a lot of action, and probably one of the high points of the X-Mickey series. Well done, folks.
Number 5. Spook and Quackers.
An old and gloomy house. Next to it, a dark-looking orchard where the trees with apples glistering in the moonlight hide all that shouldn't be seen. Middle of the night. People wonder what is going on at times like these, in places like these. Well, Huey, Dewey and Louie and a bunch of other kids who find themselves to be brave is what's going on. They aren't scared of ghosts and monsters, they know no fear. Except when they bump into an angry Uncle Donald. Donald takes the nephews home and tells them why he doesn't want them running around that scary house. He tells the nephews a story from his youth about friendship, monsters and betrayal. And the nephews laugh in his face. So, as any totally completely responsible guardian would do, he decides to get back at his nephews and give them a good scare. Though Donald also ends up with some shivers, as the old house hides more secrets than first thought, and the memories from his youth might not have been just some kid's silly prank. This story was written by Laura and Mark Shaw with drawings from Massimo Vecchi. It's a genuinely scary story with a great atmosphere and some truly frightening twists, while also being surprisingly touching.
Number 4. Dracula.
Bruno Inna and Fabio Saloni's parody of the classic novel, and this story makes that clear this is a parody of the novel, although it does contain references to other Dracula adaptations. It even goes as far as to having the name of the author in the title, although in a mouseified version. This isn't the only recent Italian story that takes a similar approach to making a parody. For example, there is Dockenstein by the same team, although that story is for another day. The first thing you notice when you look at this story is the art and its beautiful shading. This art adds a lot to the gothic and, of course, scary element to this story. Saloni is no stranger to shaded art, and his art often looks like this. The problem I and many others have with Saloni can be his art style outside of the shading, which can often be a bit hard to understand. However, I find in this story his way of drawing gets less in the way of the story, although that is just my opinion. I doubt I have to tell you what the story is about. Woman gets attacked by a vampire, and her friends and lovers, with the help of Van Helsing, try to find and kill said vampire. However, this story makes one crucial change, which is that instead of sucking the blood of its victims, the vampire merely bites their ear and whispers recipes for foods that contain beetroot. And instead of being killed or turning into a vampire, the victims turn into a beetroot themselves, which can of course be replanted and they will be brought back to life. This change does lessen the impact of the vampires. He doesn't actually kill his victims, although there is something even scarier in being turned into a beetroot. Obviously though, this change was necessary as this is a Disney comics after all. And trust me, this story doesn't stay too far away from any spookiness. Overall, this story is a fun and interesting one. All parts of it, the art, the writing, the jokes, all add up to create a great story. And a scary one.
Number 3. The 7 Ghosts.
Plotted and sketched by the legendary Floyd Gottfredson, with a script from Ted Osborne and inked by Ted Thwaites. This story is the definition of what we call a classic. Originally serialized from August 10th to 28 November 1936, the story is about Mickey, Donald and Goofy investigating the house of Colonel Bassett, which is being haunted by ghosts. And while Donald spends most of his time hiding under rugs and Goofy spends more time talking with ghosts than trying to catch them, Mickey tries to get to the bottom of how these charlatans keep disappearing. Because there's no way they are actual ghosts, right? This story was revolutionary for the entire world of comics, and it's not hard to see why. Even almost a century later, all of the jokes, the mystery and the spooks are still hitting just as hard as they did in the summer of 1936. The character dynamics between Mickey, Donald and Goofy are absolutely perfect, which is just extremely impressive considering how new these characters still were. The mystery with the ghost is also incredible, everything is properly thought out and it's pretty much perfect. Can't say it any other way. Then the gags, the jokes, the funny, it's still so funny. From the colonel who only cares about his standards and practices and still goes to bed in his haunted house just to spite the ghosts that they can't change his lifestyle, to the ghosts just being enormous goofballs. I quote, "You've gotta make sure you don't scare anyone to death. You don't want more competition." Genius. It's currently placed 32 out of the 43,196 rated stories on Index, and for a reason. Absolutely read the story, highly recommend.
Number 2. The Old Typington.
By Enrico Faccini. Mickey thinks you can only write a good detective with lots of experience as a detective. Watching some TV shows isn't enough. The reason he hasn't written any successful books yet is because he's always so busy. So Mickey's friends challenge him to go somewhere he can't be disturbed for a week and write his masterpiece of fiction there. Which is exactly what he does. The first thing at least, the writing part proves to be a lot more difficult. Especially when an old typewriter he finds starts typing out of itself. While the typewriter at first just starts some friendly banter with Mickey, the situation takes a turn when the typewriter seemingly starts predicting the future, and then scarecrows begin to pop in and out of existence, and Mickey finds himself in a nightmare written by this weird Typington typewriter. In this story, Faccini manages to create an atmosphere and narrative that is simultaneously absurd and genuinely creepy, giving the entire comic a dreamlike feel. The typewriter almost acts like Mickey's brain during this dream, coming up with random nonsensical events that guide him through this narrative that feels both artificial and arbitrary. The comic does a great job at giving you some moments that make you truly shiver. Even at the end of the story, it leaves not everything explained so you don't feel completely at rest. And it shows Mickey slowly going insane, which is always a plus in my book.
Number 1. The Mystery of the Wandering Shadows.
I don't think you can do a video on scary stories without mentioning Giulio Chierchini. Why do I say this? Well, just look at this. This and this. You get the picture. Now, Chierchini's style was never liked by everybody, but he was a legend. He was born half a year before Steamboat Willie came out, and he kept drawing into his 80s. Imagine that. I don't think anyone can ever surpass that. And he was very good at what I'd call gothic atmospheres, like dark castles, unsettling magicians. His crooks are actually crooked, not just eccentric like Murray villains. They actually look dangerous. There's always bent trash cans in Duckburg. He also gave us a nice character, Little Gum, but that's another story. Now the story I suggested for this video by him is this one. And I think everybody who knows it would agree that it belongs in here. Apparently this story parodies a Steven Spielberg movie called Poltergeist from 1982. When I look at the plot on Wikipedia, I can definitely recognize many elements of the story. So what do we have here? Oh, it's the Italian alternative to Donald's neighbor Jones. I don't think he's ever gotten an official English name. This guy just got a new TV, while Donald's TV set is at the end of its lifespan. Daisy wants to watch her favorite soap opera on Donald's TV and she can't, so Donald has to go and get a new TV set. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the money, so what does he do? He ends up buying this. From spare parts, kind of like an IKEA TV if you like. And yeah, this already looks a bit unsettling. Daisy is somewhat impressed, but that quickly changes after she sees that all channels on this TV only show monsters. And it gets worse, as a bag of chips empties over her head and the furniture starts flying through the room. Donald calls the police, but they don't believe him. His neighbor is snooping around and gets a little bit too close to the action. There's even more happening, but I don't want to spoil the whole thing, as all in all, it's a pretty memorable story, with not much humor but quite a lot of weirdness. I have to say I'm not entirely convinced by the explanation we're given at the end. Even Gyro seems confused. It reminds me a bit of some of the Bill Walsh stories, where very mysterious things happen and then we're treated to an explanation that doesn't really quite explain everything, if you understand what I mean, but it's okay. It's still a good story.
And that was our slightly supernatural spooky list of stories. What did you think? Any that you expected to be on our list? Any you think you missed out on because we don't speak Italian? Any you think do not even deserve to be seen as either good or scary? Tell us in the comments below. And as the hour of terror approaches and the owls start to wake, I think that this video is also coming to an end. We wish you a happy Halloween and hope you don't get scared to death, because I've heard jobs are scarce for ghosts. And don't worry, there won't be any jump scares.